Good morning. Before we start this morning, we will have the invocation by Pastor Tom Drake of Wynwood Free Will Baptist Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Connor Joseph, representing Boy Scout Troop number 4. Please rise as you are able.
Shall we bow for prayer? Dear God, our Heavenly Father, and the Lord Jesus, your Son, our Savior, the one who left heaven and came here and went to the cross and made atonement for our sins and rose again the third day that we may have eternal life. We thank you, Lord, for your love and for your mercy. We're thankful, Father, that you've given wisdom to the city council by allowing them and causing them to put it their first order of business to invoke your blessings and your help. So we need your help, and we pray for your help and your wisdom and for your guidance. We ask, dear God, that you would help the meeting today. We pray that it would be a good meeting conducted in a good spirit. We ask, Lord, that you'd give us the right decisions to be made. We pray, Father, that they would be in accordance with your will, because we know that your will is not only good, but it's perfect. So we would pray for that. Father, we'd lift up the council members today and also their families, the mayor and his family, and especially his staff. We want to remember today especially Miss Karen, the assistant to the mayor, and ask that you would be with her. Lord, our heart is saddened because of the tragedy that's happened in her family. So we lift her up in prayer and ask that you may draw her close to you, give her comfort and give her peace and give her strength during this very, very sad time. Father, we pray for all of us that call this city our home, and pray that you'd help us, that we may conduct ourselves in such a way that would honor you. We want to honor you and please you in all things. So we would pray for that. Again, we pray for the meeting today and the deliberations, that your blessings would be upon them. Father, we pray that your kingdom would come and your will would be done here on earth as it is in heaven. For we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Connor. At this time, we'll call the July 2nd Oklahoma City Council meeting to order. There are no items from the Office of the Mayor. Item 4, items from Council. Item A is an ordinance to be introduced and set for public hearing on July 16th and final hearing on July 30th, relating to the Zoning and Planning Code amending Chapter 59. This item is being introduced by Councilwoman Hammond and Nice. Councilwoman Hammond?
Yes, this is an item we had initially referred to some of the downtown review committees, as well as the Planning Commission, relating just to allow certain urban agricultural uses in the downtown design district. So we're just asking for that to be considered, so folks have a little bit more flexibility in those districts. This sort of mirrors, and it looks like you can speak a little bit more to it, but some urban agriculture code updates that we did about 10 or so years ago, but just sort of missed the some of these downtown design districts. So Katie, if you have anything you'd like to add.
Sure. Yeah, you just about captured it all. I'm Katie Friddle, Principal Planner in the Planning Department. As Councilwoman Hammond mentioned, this was brought before you all previously and remanded back to the Design Review Bodies and Planning Commission for their recommendation. In 2013, urban agriculture uses were established and were permitted as conditional uses throughout most of Oklahoma City. We skipped over the downtown, Bricktown, and Stockyards design districts, and we're just going back now and adding those same uses as conditional uses in those districts as well. All of the applicable guidelines and regulations will still apply to these uses just as they would to any other use and as they do throughout all of the other zoning districts. They would still have to get approvals and permits and such for any sort of structure or improvement to the site associated with the uses. It would just allow those uses to be conducted. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thanks, Katie.
Would you like to make a motion? And the item passes. Next up is item 5, City Manager reports. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Ms. Vice Mayor. We have the sales tax report, sales and use tax report is on. This is the year-end report for fiscal year '24. We did finish with 1.4% growth in sales tax, and that was a little bit below what we had projected. We projected about 2% growth. So between sales and use tax, they were both below target, came in about $4.2 million below target. However, it's not a big issue or concern because we've had a number of vacancies still that we've been carrying for quite some time that's helped to stay below our expenditure budget. And then just the good management of our team, making sure they're being wise in the way that they're managing the finances keeps us below the budget. And so it's allowed us to be able to still be in good condition. Going into next year, you'll remember that we had originally projected about 1.5% growth. With lower sales tax checks at the end of the budget process, we came in right now, we're projecting about 2% growth, a little under 2% growth for next year. But as we've worked with Russell, it's still within the range that he's projecting for us. Probably a little higher, closer to the top end of his range than what we'd like to be normally. But we still feel like we're in a good position to be able to manage through this year. But we'll monitor that and make sure we continue to report to the council. The only other thing we have is claims and payroll, and I don't have any other reports.
Thank you. Item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. We can take items A and B with one motion. And that passes. Item 7, request for uncontested continuances. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, we have several starting on page 19. Under item 11, T1, unsecured structures. All of these items will be stricken from the agenda. Item E, 4701 North Terry Avenue, the owner is secured. Item F, 515 Northwestern Avenue, the owner is secured. Item I, 1215 Northwest 2nd Street, the owner is secured. Item J, 1444 Southwest 22nd Street to re-notify for a new owner. Item K, 3404 Northwest 23rd Street to re-notify for additional structures. Item L, item L is 1016 Northeast 27th Street to re-notify for a new owner. And then item M, 1232 Northeast 34th Street, the owner has secured. Continuing on page 19, item 11U1, abandoned buildings. All of these items are stricken from the agenda. Item C, 4701 North Terry Avenue, the owner is secured. Item F, 1215 Northwest 2nd Street, the owner is secured. Item G, 3404 Northwest 23rd Street to re-notify for additional structures. And then item H, 1232 Northeast 34th Street, the owner has secured. That's all the items that I have.
Thank you. We'll recess the council meeting and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we have items A through K. Thank you. Sorry. Still turning page A through K, where we could take all as one.
I would like to make a motion to move into executive session for item J. So I'd like to move item J2.
All right. Item J2, there's a motion on the floor.
James, you want to cast your vote? Oh, sure, yes.
Item fails 5-3.
I'd like to vote separately on this item. Particularly, just for the public's sake, I want to read a part from this memo that concerns a minor. It says, the lawsuit concerns an incident on July 20th, 2023, when OCPD was called for suspicious activity and 4 males on bicycles breaking into vehicles at 3:40 a.m. in a neighborhood at 1420 Northwest 112th Street. Initial officers saw 4 males flee upon their arrival, and Sergeant Burris and his canine Edge were called to the scene at approximately 4 a.m. to assist with locating the individuals. Eventually, canine Edge located one individual, the minor plaintiff, hiding in grass approximately 6 feet tall near a pond. Upon locating plaintiff, canine Edge apprehended the hidden subject by biting his leg, as he was trained to do. Plaintiff was then taken into custody and transported to Mercy Hospital, where he was treated and released to his mother. Plaintiff could have surrendered at any point prior to being apprehended by Canine Edge and Sergeant Burris, but chose to continue to hide. I find it concerning that we don't want to enter an executive session to learn more about this, particularly because it involves a minor. And second, because this, as he was trained to do, is concerning to me. I've not been informed that apparently we are training canines to immediately bite somebody upon location of them. And it just seems like there's a lot of other ways that we could be training these animals to alert their handler, in this case, Sergeant Burris, to someone being found. Again, they're a suspect. They're not, it just is very concerning to me that apparently this council does not have an interest in hearing more about this assault on a minor by people being paid by our taxpayer dollars. So I'd like to vote separately on this item.
And I'll take this opportunity to also remind the public that we are a legislative quasi-executive body and not a judicial body. And so we perform our legal function by providing the services for our employee to be represented. And should the outcome of that judicial process deem that individual at fault, then we take a different action as a body and as a department. So there's a motion on the floor.
Can I just reemphasize what the councilwoman just said as we vote, that this is just for us to hear more about this case in order for us as the decision makers here to make us not only sound decisions, but when our residents ask us questions, we are able to give them a definite answer or a defined answer about said case, which also bothers me about a couple of other cases that we have chosen not to go into executive session for, that I can't speak to my community about because I don't know. Nobody's telling me anything. In the way that these are written, these memos are written, it's as if we are already taking a side. And that's the unfortunate part about how we as this council body are unable to at least understand what's going on underneath what is written and seen and what pieces of what is written. That's not enough for us to look at this.
Well, and just a reminder, if we go into executive session, it's because the public can't know yet what's going on because it's under investigation. So you can't give that information.
That's still not the point that I'm speaking
And
about.
you can ask the attorneys at any point in time.
Again, I said what I said, and that is the issue for me as far as how these cases are brought forward to us, and also how even the media reports on said cases that they see pertaining to the information they receive. So while we know we probably can't speak more so about the case, we can negate things that have been said in the media that are not true if we understand what is going on with said case.
And I will point out that these speak to particular policy decisions that are a broader conversation about what is in the scope of police duties, which apparently include assaulting a minor with an animal, and the training that we've given them, and that is a policy decision that I think is worth hearing more about, both in this specific case, but also more broadly. And so
How are they supposed to know it was a minor if he's running?
I'm not
3:30 in
doing
the morning.
this. I would like to make a motion to deny this item.
Right, so the motion on the floor is to deny the item. So the motion to deny fails.
Now, would you entertain a motion to approve it at this time, or would you rather do it with the rest of the matters on the docket?
We can vote on it separately.
All right. I'd like to move to approve it at this time, please.
And the item passes 5-3. And we can take up the remainder of the items of the CMFA now with one motion. And that passes. So we will adjourn OCMFA and convene as the OCPPA, where we can take items A through F with one motion. And that passes. So we will adjourn the OCPPA and reconvene as the Oklahoma City Council, where we have item 9, the consent docket. Mr. City Manager, I understand we have scheduled presentations on items 9BR and CB.
Yes.
And are there any council members that have other items that they would like to discuss or call out for a separate vote?
Yes, just item CD, as in dog, just questions about it in relation to other ways.
You said CD, correct? Okay, thank you. Any others? Hearing none, we will just take them in order. So we'll start with item BR then.
BR is Jeff Mulder, our airports director. Just give us an overview on this. It's an approval of funding from the GOLT funds for supporting air service incentives. And so I'll let Jeff present that.
Good morning, everybody. Jeff Mulder, Director of Airports. So the item that Craig just mentioned, there is a state of Oklahoma is making funds available to airports in the state for air service development, and it requires a local match. The challenge for airports is that the FAA doesn't allow airports to directly participate in these kinds of funds, so we needed another source of the match for the funds that we're applying for. And as Craig mentioned, it's with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust for $500,000 to match a grant that would be made available for $2 million, for $2.5 million total. The intent of the program is that it would then be made available as we attempt to recruit air service into Oklahoma City. Generally, these kinds of funds would be used kind of like an insurance policy where an air carrier would commit to begin service into the market. If they ended up losing money during the performance of this service, they'd be able to use these funds to replenish their losses. And so the way it would be structured is the grant would be awarded to the Economic Alliance. That's the vehicle we're using here, the Oklahoma City Economic Alliance, and then combined with the state funds. So we are in the process of recruiting for new air service. Our primary target would be for new international service. We're completing the construction of our federal inspection station by the end of this year, and so we're targeting new service into next year. This kind of fund would be available then for an air carrier that would start that kind of service, and so this resolution is to apply for these funds to the state using the vehicle that's described in the resolution.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
Any questions? Okay. All right, we'll move on then to item CB.
Ms. David Todd, our MAPS Director, MAPS Program Director, will introduce this item on the MAPS 4 Transit Plan Growth.
Good morning, David Todd, MAPS Program Manager. This item is for essentially the BRT line, and a lot of effort has gone into it with stakeholders and user groups. And this item also comes to you with a whole lot of review from the subcommittee, the Connectivity Subcommittee, and the MAPS 4 Citizens Advisory Board. So I have Jill Gibson and Luke Schmidt here today from Kimley Horn to go through all of the details on the project, and I'd like to hand it over to them at this time.
Good morning, City Council. As David mentioned, I'm Jill Gibson with Kimley Horn, and I've been the project manager for this alternatives analysis. So today, we wanted to go through the schedule of where we've been, provide a summary of the technical work to date, describe the public engagement, and describe the recommended alternatives, and then go through the next steps. So we have been at this alternatives analysis over the last year and a half, which has really been two components, a series of technical analysis and work, and then very much a community-driven effort. And we've had really 3 rounds of substantial public engagement where we've previewed our work, received feedback, made refinements. And so today we've got a recommendation for the locally preferred alternative, which is essentially approving or asking for approval on the route. So as we kicked off the effort, we worked with the community to define the goals and objectives of this project, and we came up with 5. So they included connecting communities and resources, facilitating prosperity and economic growth, expanding equitable mobility options, moving people efficiently, which is important to attract ridership for bus rapid transit, and utilizing available resources. So we conducted an initial evaluation, and as y'all are likely very well aware of, BRT likes to operate on densely developed corridors and have a simple and direct path of travel to really maximize the frequency and ridership needed to justify the cost of the operations. And so we used our goals and objectives to develop evaluation criteria and took a look at both corridors to understand, what are the possible ways in which BRT could serve these 2 corridors. And then the map you see on the screen is a heat map that reflects how these evaluation criteria or metrics are in alignment with the goals and objectives. So green is more consistent with goals, and then red is less consistent with goals. And this looks at key destinations, area of high activity, looking at future land use, employment centers, and looking at how we can maximize the high ridership markets. So we came up with roughly 6 alternatives that we analyzed really in depth and talked to the community and local community partners about. So through this in-depth technical analysis, we We analyzed those 6 alternatives against the evaluation framework. That was a very detailed evaluation that had overall 24 objectives. So we went segment by segment to really understand the performance of each segment so that we could eventually come to a recommendation based on discussions with community partners and this detailed evaluation for a recommended alignment. So just a quick engagement summary over the last year and a half. We have held almost 20 public events, so 15 pop-up events as well, including almost 500 visitors. So the map you see on the screen, the red pins are where we had open houses, and the blue pins are where we held pop-up events at various weekdays, weekends, various hours to really engage all folks that were in the area, to get their feedback and input on our work. We also held online surveys and had collateral on the project website to receive a lot of feedback. So we had really good both in-person and online participation. And wanted to also, just call out that we've worked closely with a variety of stakeholders over the last year and a half who've provided really good feedback on the different steps through the alternatives analysis, both in the Northeast and the South. And so our last round of engagement, where we previewed the locally preferred alternative and our recommendation, we got a really strong positive feedback from the community members. Really, folks are really excited about better access to healthcare and educational facilities, having more reliable bus rapid transit service, the connections to employment opportunities, and really direct access to key districts and neighborhoods. And then finally, folks really excited about the service to historically disadvantaged populations. So overall, the feedback that we received was very positive, and folks, the questions are really about, hey, how soon can this service be realized? So I'm going to step through the recommended alternative. Just to orient you to this map, the red arrows here and lines are from the Regional Transportation Authority high-capacity routes. The light pink were just adopted last week, so those will change to the darker red. But I'll just step through the recommended alternative from the Adventure District in the Northeast down to the logistics hub in the South. You also see at Northwest 13th, there's the station dot is highlighted in red because that would be co-located with the RTA's station, as well as on 29th in the South. There are overall 26 station pairs, and this alignment would serve roughly 50,000 residents and provide access to 50,000 jobs. Overall, and our planning level estimates is about 2,700 weekday riders. So that's 17 miles end to end. We looked at different configurations for bus rapid transit, including mixed traffic, which the bus would operate in general traffic lanes, the business access and turn lanes, which is similar to the Northwest Rapid configuration that has BAT lanes, which allows in the peak period both cars to access that BAT lane to turn, as well as emergency vehicles. And then finally, center running. And so we're exploring this option on Shields, which has a dedicated bus lane center running on the left side. And then we have used renderings shown here to talk with members of the community about what these stations would look like. Here, a rendering at the Science Museum, and then a rendering at OCCC. The service plan assumptions that we've used are the same as the Northwest Rapid service, with 12-minute headways during the peak period. And then on the weekends, roughly a 15-minute peak period. So that means you show up to the station, and every 12 or 15 minutes, a bus is showing up. And so At the end of the project, we conducted a benefit cost analysis, and that's a federally recognized way in which you really analyze the quantitative and qualitative benefits of a particular route. And so through this, we've come to understand that the project could be federally competitive for additional money and grants. And so here describes some of the potential benefits of jobs during construction, increased property values due to access to new stations, reducing noise and congestion, cleaner air. All of these metrics are calculated through this BCA process, benefit cost analysis. So that has led us to wanting to further explore how this project would potentially perform for additional federal discretionary grants. If this project is, you all adopt and approve the locally preferred alignment, really it's the beginning of much further analysis and work through preliminary engineering and environmental to define the station placements through design, and then ultimately start construction in 2028 and be open for revenue service in 2029. So this timeline is consistent with a MAPS 4 implementation plan. However, it does show the potential for additional collaboration with the Federal Transit Administration should the project be awarded additional federal funding. And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
I had a few questions, but first I just want to say both to your team and to the MAPS and Embark and all the sort of different folks who collaborated on this. I know there's a lot of desires, needs, expectations that you all are trying to meet, and so it's a very difficult process. I know we were in a few meetings where, just kind of wrestling with that, like how do you make that decision about going a certain direction with the corridor, and I know, and I've heard from some folks that there's a few spots that they, at least for the south side, is the one that generally covers my ward, that there's some points of like frustration, but I think hearing that, there's interest in sort of both, I think, helping connect with sort of like what the opportunities, sort of with the Northwest route where we're able to sort of reallocate regular fixed route service, sort of reimagine where some of those resources can go to kind of help supplement and support and do some connectivity between the BRT route and then the fixed route I'm excited for what that will look like. My question is, with potential federal funding, what will that give us the potential to do? And if we didn't receive it, is that going to sort of, what are the impacts of not potentially getting it if we didn't?
Great question. Maybe I'll step through this a little bit more in detail to answer that question. So what you see, the first activity there after the adoption of the LPA is pre-project development activities. So that is where we do further modeling work and coordinate with the Federal Transit Administration to really understand the project's competitiveness with a lot more detail. And there's formal coordination with FTA where we submit actually a package. It's called a ratings package that goes through all of their evaluation criteria. It's a very prescribed process. And so that we submit that package to them, and there's formal coordination to understand the likelihood of going through what's called the CIG, the Capital Investment Grant process for small starts. And so based on our earlier work, the benefit cost analysis I described earlier, it scored really well. And so we think that our recommendation is actually to go through this pre-project development activities and coordinate with FTA directly so that we have a better understanding of its competitiveness. These small start grants award up to, I think it's something along the lines of 80% of the total project cost. That's not what we're recommending. The local sales tax here has $60 million funded for this project, and so we think it's substantially less than that of what the ask will be. But that said, if the project is not awarded the Small Starts grant, we should have a better understanding of the competitiveness through this step-by-step process. And if so, then we would have to, if it wasn't awarded that Small Starts grants, we would have to think about other federal discretionary grants or potentially right-size the project to meet the local sales tax funds.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you sort of drawn the recommendations with the intention that the additional funding would help us get there, essentially.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if not, we
Then we
would
would have to-
right-size the alignment to
Okay.
meet the dollars that there are locally.
Currently. Okay, thank you, that's very helpful. And again, just appreciate all the work. I know it's a very intense, lots of information, lots of data, and then a lot of feedback to go through. So yeah, just really appreciate all the work and sort of the interest from MAPS and BART staff to kind of continue that conversation about those kind of sticking points for the south side. And I think both for kind of how do we connect further south for people than that, where this would terminate to make that service a lot more connected and get folks kind of as far south as they need to and want to go.
And I just had one question. If you'll go, there was a slide that talked about the streets as far as how the BRT will be constructed depending on what those streets are. My concern is, I know we're choosing the route that goes from 13th to 23rd down Kelly, and that's a 2-lane street. So 2 questions. One, because I'm already dealing with some things happening on a neighbor street in this same community of restructuring the street. One, what does it look like as far as us communicating with our residents about us widening this street in order for us to accommodate this BRT route? And 2, being able to educate also our residents for them to understand that this is what will be coming in accommodating for them. And also let me put another emphasis on Kelly, because there's a new federal bike lane that has been implemented, which has also altered the street of Kelly as we know it. So this is also about to put, if I can say, a monkey wrench in everything that people know as Kelly Avenue and how they travel. So just curious what that looks like and how we are going to ensure that the BRT is made successful and not something that our community says, we don't want that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, great question. So I can unpack both of those. If you look on the map, the segment of Kelly between 13th and Northeast 23rd, that's
I'm gonna interrupt you. Will you show, there was a different slide that actually showed this, the next one, if you will.
Is it the cross sections?
Yeah,
where the 3 cross sections?
where it actually showed the streets where it would be like 2, 3.
Oh, yeah,
or-
absolutely. It's right after, Carrie, it's right after the map.
Sorry.
So
But
I can talk while we're pulling that up
Okay.
too. So Kelly is shown as a mixed traffic corridor based on the recommendation. So what that means is specifically on the Kelly section, we wouldn't be widening the road, we'd be using the existing roadway width today. So it wouldn't actually be a widened facility. The BRT would operate within mixed traffic with the current traffic today. So that segment of Kelly wouldn't have a widening associated with it. These 3 cross sections were just typicals based on your section line roadways in a majority of the city, but on Kelly itself, we'd observe the curb lines that are out there today, and BRT would operate within the facility itself. If you go back one slide for me, at Northeast 13th and Northeast 23rd, we're showing station pair locations. That would be the 2 locations that would be further coordinated on where the best station placement would be to have the least interruption on Kelly. And that would be part of the next phase of design is the community coordination, talking through those station locations. But this recommendation is not envisioning the widening of Kelly itself to accommodate additional lanes.
Okay, thank you. And now I may, as I'm looking, just trying to get my bearings together again, looking at this map. So this will just take you straight down 13th to, yeah, it's taking you to Kelly to 23rd. Well, okay, so I guess that still gives me a little concern. Are we going to resurface this street in order for us to accommodate what we're doing? Because I think, in my opinion, as we work to do these things that are wonderful for our community and our residents, it's hard for us to just say we're going to do it on this same road when we know, unfortunately, with this particular stretch of road, we've had constant potholes and repairs that we've had to do. We've also now put the bike lane symbols on the streets, which, you know, that's fine. It's going to be what it's going to be. But again, you know, I think it's more of the expectation of being able to say what BRT is supposed to bring, if that makes sense. Because if we're going to have, you know, that type of system, and you're still going to have those hubs and stops, we're going to have to accommodate those hubs and stops, correct?
Yes.
So in order for us to accommodate those hubs and stops, it's just for looking at how we are working through the process of again, what bike lanes, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place right now because those are still on my brain right now. But as we look at BRT in relation to how people travel and get around within this part of our community, that is definitely something that I am curious to understand more. And I will preface this with Friday. There was a group of us, well, a few of us that rode the bus for the Free Friday just to understand this, not this particular route, but how we use the Route 22, if I'm not mistaken, within Northeast Oklahoma City. And it also services pretty much some of these areas too. So it was easier to experience and understand as a rider how these are impacting and what BRT can bring also for this community. So those are the reasons I bring up those questions and just hope that we'll continue to work through that process of education, continued education. And also, I don't think it would be a bad idea to look at even widening, only because, you know, it's something that's needed, you know. So this is a great service, and I think we should walk in the lens of excellence for what this BRT is supposed to bring for even the neighborhood that we're putting those in. Thank you.
May I just add briefly, I looked up the pavement condition index. Well, first let me just say, good job to your team. I've enjoyed participating in the updates. Good job, Embark and Maps. Okay, so kudos. But I looked up the pavement condition index, which anyone can do by typing in PCI OKC into Google. But Kelly, yeah, from 23rd to 13th it's a 49. And I know that traditionally when a street finds itself 50 or below, that starts receiving priority for resurfacing. But yeah, Kelly's at a 49. So I guess whatever you end up doing there, something needs to happen, right? There needs to be attention to that street in terms of its condition. It says poor here, not my words. So, and then the only other thing, I'm sure everyone's thinking about it in the MAPS office and planning and public works, but I would just, remind everyone to think about as we're implementing BRT and looking just here on 23rd Street, but the streetscape, the Clara Looper Corridor streetscape, and then the funding that was just before that for a previous streetscape that's going to combine here. I think this has an opportunity, probably pretty similar to what we're up to on Classen with TOD, Transit Oriented Development, and just thinking about the economic development opportunities of that corridor, but also the ridership and just the landscaping, the aesthetic. So I hope those conversations are happening. I'm here to encourage them to continue happening.
I can tell you, they have definitely been on the lens of the street enhancement that we've been working on, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to the next item, Councilwoman Nysa, it'll be item CD.
Yes, it's just a question. I know as we look at how we have a service agreement with YWCA for Domestic Violence Victims Assistance Program, just curious, and I'm sure we probably talked about it, but I've slept since then, so just need a refresher about, as far as human trafficking, how we provide any services or agreements for an assistance program in relation to that. Just
Deputy
curious.
Chief Butler is here and can speak to that.
Morning. So what was your question again, ma'am? About human trafficking?
I was curious to know, as we look at the sole source service agreement with the Domestic Violence Victims Assistance Program, if we have some type of assistance program that we also have a service agreement with pertaining to human trafficking, and what does that look like for our city as far as how we provide that service?
Now, I don't know exactly what service for human trafficking it has, but the YWCA, we've been partnering with them for years, providing services for that. But some of their programming may deal with that.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific answer on that program for human trafficking, but I can find that out for you.
Yes, I figured you probably didn't, only because I knew this did not have anything to do specifically with domestic violence, but in relation to domestic violence, this is also an issue within our city. So I was just curious to know if we had something similar, what that looks like as far as that program assistance that we give and offer from our city perspective, and also, how our community can access that.
I will get the name of that program and get that back to you.
And I know we do Dragonfly Home, but I'm just curious, if it's just that one, if it's more, what does that look like?
I will get all of those program names to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheena.
Thank you. Now we're going to travel back. We've got a citizen signed up to speak for item 9AO. Partner and collaborator Robin Jones from the West 10 District.
Good morning, Robin Jones. I am the full-time director for the West 10 District, which is the Northwest 10th Street corridor from I-44 West, and then for the Windsor District corridor, which is from I-44 West on Northwest 23rd. And so 3 of you are my representatives on the council. And the West 10 and Windsor districts, as you know, are suburban communities, which makes us kind of a odd duck in the district family. So we have to cultivate engagement in a different way. But I wanted to come today and just let you know that your funding over the years has had a lot of impact. I'm not going to be able to tell about all of our initiatives, but I wanted to just tell you about a couple. One thing for the Windsor district, which is mostly Councilperson Cooper's district, with regards to representation, we have a central focus geographically in the Windsor district that's called the Windsor Planner, and it's at Northwest 23rd and Meridian, and it has been a curse and a blessing, like so many volunteer projects, but currently it's a blessing in that it is a beautiful green space of Oklahoma native plants, a monarch way station. We just had Rudy's Construction donate significant services to upgrade the look of this planter, and as of 3 days ago, we had our first art installation by a West Oklahoma City artist, and it's called Butterflies Taking Flight. It's really quite beautiful and a little startling to see going down the street. But we're just very excited about that. We have plans to do more art installations along Northwest 23rd. And even though we're doing much more than just beautification, that's what I wanted to focus on for the Windsor District. And shifting to the West 10 District, which really kind of needs a little bit more attention. And I think it's the largest district geographically. And in Northwest 10th Street corridor, believe it or not, our favorite thing of pride is our history, Oklahoma history. In fact, Council Grove, which is a 3 square mile plot of land in the West 10 District, is probably the first thing that's ever been on an Oklahoma map back to the 1800s. And we capitalize on that history. We have 3 initiatives with history in our area, historically local tours. We have them once a month. And when we started this, we kind of wondered if anybody would be interested. And we've actually been doing it like 4 or 5 years. We do it once a month and always have at least 25 people come. And we love Visit OKC webpage because they help us get the word out on that.
You have about half a minute to finish up.
Okay, well, we have a speaker series, a historically local speaker series. We're in partnership with OCCF and getting historical markers. We also really like to cultivate a culture of appreciation and do several things with the police department. Our favorite is we recognize a police officer once a quarter for exceptional service, and then we do finally West Oklahoma City Community Conversations, which several of you have been a part of, and that is an excellent opportunity to engage with businesses and residents. And there's much more I could talk about, but for an area that's very challenging to do because we don't have a Main Street core downtown, I feel like we've made a lot of progress and a lot due to the funding from you. So, any questions?
I just want to say thank you for your work and your just service. It's always such a treat to see you. In this instance, you're so close to Director David Todd with Maps 4, and I like literally in terms of proximity right now. And so I just want to take this moment. I know that our planning department has some ideas on Maps $4 in terms of streetscapes for the Windsor District, but I want to make sure that conversations are happening with the Windsor District Board and hearing some of you all's ideas. I mean, I'm sure you've been to the Paseo recently and seen that streetscape, and Brittain's under construction right now, so maybe your board can go take a tour and see what's happening, get some ideas. I know we already have some ideas and stuff, but I just like collaboration. You all are the people on the ground, you know, so.
Thank you, and I would agree because I know that different people have different perspectives, but I do think that West Oklahoma City is often overlooked on opportunities. And the one I didn't mention is we just have determined we're going to probably have $900,000 worth of improvement from ARPA funding with the Alliance for Economic Development relative to a storefront improvement grant. And that's the first thing that we've had in quite a while, so thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
I just had a question. When are the tours? When are the tours?
And I could really talk a lot about the tours, but they're really fascinating. They're done with Castle Falls, which is a historically architectural gem in Oklahoma City. It's a castle, and so the tour is about Council Grove and the architect of this castle, which has a ton of Oklahoma City embedded in it, the third Saturday of every month at noon, and there's no charge. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for your commitment to West OKC. You know, over the time that West 10 has been in existence, you know, I've lived kind of in this area, both north and south of 10th Street for a really long time. The changes that the community has seen that have been at her leadership and the board that she has put together and the volunteers that she evokes has been nothing short of remarkable. And Councilwoman Nice, that Castle Falls tour is really, really cool. So I recommend it to everybody. So Robin, thanks for coming out today. We really appreciate it. And with that, I believe that is all the items that we called out separately, so we can move the consent agenda forward with one vote. That passes. Next up, we have item 10, the concurrence docket, where we can take items A through O with one motion. And that passes. Moving on to item 11, items for individual consideration. Item A is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, requesting emergency for PUD 2004, rezoning 9420 West I-40 Service Road. Come on up.
Good morning, Mark Zitzau. Address is 1 East Sheridan Avenue with Johnson & Associates. Before you is a PUD. If you've been out to this area, you've probably seen a paintball operation that's been taking place for quite some time. Our client, Mr. Thane Swisher, his family owns this property. They own much of the property that surrounded this parcel. And several years back, the family donated it to form what will become Swisher Park. And so in an effort to use the portion of this property that is viable for development, we filed a PUD that we're seeking to do a high-end RV resort. Went to Planning Commission, staff recommended approval, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval, and our neighbor to our west, the Canoe facility, the electric car manufacturer, showed up in support of the project as well. There's been conversation since Planning Commission, and what we are exploring and in agreement in principle on is for that park to have access to the lake. And so an email was just sent setting up a meeting with the Parks Department and Mr. Swisher in an effort to begin crafting that agreement. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we would ask for your approval.
Mark, thank you, and to the Swisher family, thank you so much for your contribution to the city of this land to bring a park to far west OKC. We're very excited about the opportunity. We recently had a meeting with the residents on the development of this park and what their wishes and hopes and dreams are for that. And we've got a lot of feedback. Anyway, so just appreciate how much they're willing to continue to cooperate with us so that we can provide lake access as a potential option for our residents as we develop that park.
I don't really have any questions, but I'm going to move this thing forward if no one else does. Okay, so I move for approval.
And the item passes. Thank you. Item B is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval for PUD 2008, rezoning 6205 South Post Road from R1 Single Family Residential. Councilmember Stone.
Has anyone signed up to speak?
Yes, they have. Would you like to hear from them first?
Please.
Okay. Item, let's see, that'll be Bob Anderson. If you'll please state your name and address, and you've got 3 minutes, sir.
My name is Bob Anderson. My family owns property on the east side of Post Road, south of 59th Street. I just have a couple of questions or concerns on the rezoning issue that is proposed. The first thing I would like to point out is the legal description is not correct, but the sketch is correct. At this time, we don't really object to any proposed rezoning as long as Tinker Air Force Base does not oppose it. The future construction there and the possible plans on the west side of Post Road, there's an existing high-pressure gas line. And then there will be acquired, if not already acquired, a 60-inch water line for the rerouting of the water line, which is being rerouted when Douglas Boulevard is being closed for the expansion of Tinker Air Force Base. My concern on the rezoning, what is the exact purpose of it, of the rezoning? To be specific, if it is to improve or to change the coefficient of runoff, which will greatly increase the amount of volume of water. Natural flow is to the south and to the east, and that will impact everyone to the south, especially those people that live next to an existing road called Tucker Lane on the east side of Post Road. Any asphalt, any concrete, any future buildings of any kind, and the roof, the runoff from all that water will be greatly impacted because it will be a lot faster because the coefficient of runoff has been decreased. That is my main concern. And as far as the rezoning, don't have an issue with that. Specifically, what is the purpose of it? And those are real issue questions that, if not addressed at this time, will be addressed whenever the planning and the future development of
30
that
seconds
particular piece of
remaining.
property takes place. Any questions or concerns from me or comments?
Mr. Anderson, first, I appreciate you bringing your concerns up here today. I had some of those same concerns. Had a conversation with the applicant and Caitlin? Is Caitlin here? No? Mr. Box? Can you address some of those concerns for Mr. Anderson?
Sure. Sadly, David Box, not Caitlin Turner. Same address, 522 Concord Drive. So the purpose of the SPUD, or excuse me, the PUD, is to allow for mining early, in the end, light industrial uses. So prior to the issuance of any building permit, we will have to submit a drainage analysis to show how we meet the city ordinance as well as state statute. What those say is you cannot create an adverse impact on the downstream users. So we will have to prove from an engineering standpoint why we will meet the concerns that he has and adhere to that ordinance and not create an adverse impact.
And can you also talk about briefly how the operations will change or will not change there?
The which
current
operations? So the current operations involve mining, which is a bit of a misnomer. Mining really just means we are, extracting the topsoil. We have gone through the state permitting process. We have our permit from the State Department of Mines. Now we're here to get our ability through the zoning to do it. Nothing will change. It will continue on. At some point, the site will be in a position to be developed for light industrial uses that will be compatible with what is going on out in that area. You have some existing zoning to our south that is heavier industrial. Obviously, you have Tinker Air Force Base to the west, which is heavier industrial type use. So the uses we propose are compatible with what the comprehensive plan would suggest to be here. And again, the mining operation is a temporary type of use on the surface.
And that's actually been what they've been doing out there for a while now,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a bit of a strange process in that when you go get your state permit, the state doesn't tell someone that you may have a zoning issue too. So it's fully permitted, fully licensed with the state, also monitored by ODEQ, but we have to get the zoning as well.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, do you feel like that answers most of your questions on that?
I appreciate that. The other concern is there is no sewer facilities for any future expectations out there in the future development. So that would mean either a sewer lagoon, unless the city of Oklahoma City or another municipality plans on bringing sewage out to that area. That is an issue, a sewer lagoon. There's not enough property in the rezoning issue to accommodate that, not with the impact of the water line, the 5-foot water line, and the gas line. And that's my concerns, and I appreciate the opportunity to express that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, if you don't mind. As I was reading, just curious, as I heard about the mining aspect, I'm reading about the vulnerable aquifers. I'm just curious, how does that cross as far as being able to mine in a place where you have a vulnerable aquifer? And we have been through aquifers before, so I was just curious. That's just seems. I mean, I'm sure it may complement, but I'm just curious how that works.
So this mining is just the removal of the topsoil. So we're not impacting the aquifer in that we're not tapping into it, we're not touching it. This is simply removal of trees and then the topsoil.
Does that make sense to you, Councilwoman?
Not necessarily, but it's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is only because of the pages about aquifers that I have read, and that you all have also read.
And I think it's weird that it calls it mining when you're just removing some topsoil off of it. But yeah, so my understanding is operations there aren't going to change. They've been going that way for a year and a half, 2 years. Because when I first looked at this, Mr. Anderson, at first I had some concerns as well. And with the backup plan, with looks like storage units.
There's some personal storage use unit allowed within the SPUD, or the PUD, yes.
Okay. So that wouldn't create any sewage issues. Any drainage issues have to be addressed before any construction would possibly get done on that. So with that, and thank you again, Mr. Anderson, I'll go ahead and move for its approval.
And the item passes. We'll move on now to item C, ordinance on final hearing. Recommended for approval, SPUD 1607, rezoning 11765 North Morgan Road. Councilwoman Carter.
Has anyone signed up to speak?
No.
No? Okay. I've kind of gone through this and talked with the applicant, so I'll go ahead and move for approval.
And the item passes. Moving on to item D, ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval for SPUD 1619, rezoning 11145 South Sunny Lane Road from agriculture to SPUD 1. Councilmember Stone. There are a couple of folks signed up to speak.
Okay. Let's go ahead and hear from them.
Okay. First up will be Jeremy King, followed by Kyle Dudley. Mr. King, you'll have 3 minutes if you'll state your name and address for the record. And again, you'll have 3 minutes, and the city clerk will let you know when there's 30 seconds left.
Okay. My name is Jeremy King. I own the property at 4225 Southeast 111th Court, which is direct. The house where the pointer is directly to the west of that, or I'm sorry, to the east of that. I apologize. This motorcycle trading facility is just too close to a residential facility. I've submitted a letter that I believe you guys have copies of with my opposition. Most of it just involves noise. The only thing that I want to add to that, they've focused on that this is going to be low speed and it's not going to produce that much noise. But we were walking down a street in Norman and there were some motorcycles across the street parked. Even though they're parked, they can rev and produce quite a lot of noise even when they're not moving. The water runoff with the slant of the land, there's a water passage under Sunny Lane Road that feeds into the, I believe it's the Thunderbird water system. All of the water from the area that they want to pave off is going to run straight off of that due to the tilt of the land onto my property, potentially backing that up and also causing problems from our neighbors across the street who couldn't be here today. I believe their current facility is a little bit larger. They said that they were planning on using one instructor with 6 to 8 motorcycles per session, whereas their current one, I believe they have 2 instructors and do 6 to 8 motorcycles across there. So in the future, businesses tend to grow, and if they're asking for 1 day a week now, I really don't want to have to deal with this another day a week if they decide they need to expand due to attendance and things like that. I've tried to purchase this property to build a home for my family there very soon. It's not something that I would choose to live next to, and I don't think anybody would choose to live next to that. So I would have a very, very hard time turning this property back over. It is in a neighborhood. I don't know that rezoning would be an issue for, or would be a possibility for me there. So it's kind of stuck residential, and it's going to be hard pressed to find somebody to live next door to a facility like this. And if you guys have any questions for me, I think I've covered everything that I need to cover.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions for you. I noticed on the amended technical evaluation, they were limited to daylight hours, maximum of 8 motorcycles, can only do it between the months of March through November, maximum speed 20 mile an hour, engine size less than 300 cc's.
Correct.
So I was just curious if you knew, or if you were aware of all those limitations?
I was.
Okay.
And sitting out on your back porch, sipping lemonade, trying to enjoy a nice quiet day, and hearing motorcycles go round and round next to you is not going to be give me much enjoyment of that property.
I was trying to compare that to the noise of my neighbor's lawnmower. Just trying to get an idea, and then I'm like, well, I think my lawnmower is louder than my neighbor's lawnmower.
Right.
I limited it under 300 cc's. I thought that was a pretty good limitation on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate you sharing your concerns on this thing.
Sure. And the noise, the other thing about noise, depending on how they orient that pad, right now there's an I-1 to the north that gives us, it's about, just looking at the property schematic, it's about 262 feet according to this. Depending on how they orient the pad, the edge of their pad where they're going to be running the motorcycles will be approximately 56 feet for my property. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity for noise drop off at that distance.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. King. Kyle Dudley? Mr. Dudley, again, state your name and address, please, for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes, and the city clerk will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Kyle Dudley, 4201 Southeast 111th Court. I'm the neighbor of Mr. King. On the map, my house is the one that is just to the south of the proposed rezoning location. I was unable to make the Planning Commission meetings because I was out of state for work. They denied the first time. The second time they passed or approved the rezoning. The issues I have are just the same as Mr. King, the noise. Currently, the building that's just north of that site is or has been a truck repair business. I'm not opposed to someone using this property. It's just I don't think that a motorcycle training facility is the best use of this property right next to a residential area. The current location that this gentleman has is in I-35 in Indian Hills in Norman. I'm assuming the Turnpike is buying that land and he's having to relocate, but that location is not near any residences, and I'm sure there've been no complaints. I have an issue with the CCs because, you said 300 CCs, but you multiply that times eight motorcycles at a time, it's going to be loud enough that I'll be able to hear it from my house. Also, there's not much of a buffer there. The trees that are there, he would, I assume, remove to pour this pad of concrete or asphalt. So I wouldn't have any kind of buffer. We don't have fences. These are acre lots that we're on. I represent, my neighbors as well. They weren't able to make it because of work. They come to some of the Planning Commission meetings, but I'd just like to echo what Mr. King said, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions for you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is the applicant present? Everett? Perrin? No? All right, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we defer this for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And, Mr. King and Mr. Dudley, I'll reach out to the applicant to see if he has any proposals that he would like to do that he thinks would maybe take care of some of the concerns that y'all have. And then I will follow up with you as well, and we can make a decision in 2 weeks. So thank y'all very much.
And the item is deferred. Moving on to item E, an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval. SPUD 1620 rezoning 1532 Northwest 30th Street. Councilman Cooper.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. I believe the applicant's representative is here. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit the backstory here.
Sure. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. So this is for an R3 SPUD that would allow for a triplex. The building is already constructed. If you look at the area, you've got multifamily that exists to the north, to the northwest. Along Blackwelder, there's a series of SPUDs that allow for duplex developments, close proximity to OCU, and it's consistent with the land use typology under the comprehensive plan. There was one protest letter that came in after Planning Commission. No one showed up at Planning Commission. The protest letter simply said that the R3 zoning will, I think, ruin the neighborhood or something like that, which of course there's multifamily zoning all throughout this area. So we would disagree with that assessment.
Has anyone signed up to speak other than? Okay. To Mr. Box's point, there exists all around here multifamily with, 1- and 2-story homes. So I see compatibility is just fine, and I would move for approval.
Thank you.
And the item passes. Item F is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval. SPUD 1621, rezoning 1821 North MacArthur Boulevard. Councilman Cooper.
Yes, thank you. So I spoke with Terry, who is working on this this property. Unfortunately, we're going to need to defer. I would request to council to defer this for a couple weeks. His someone working on some renderings for us, but unfortunately they were out of town or not available between the last 2 weeks when I spoke with them. So we spoke yesterday, and he's requesting that he and I sit down together between now and the next council meeting, and so I'd request a 2-week deferral, please.
Okay. And the item is deferred.
Thanks.
Item G is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval for SPUD 1623, rezoning 10331 Northwest Expressway from agriculture to SPUD. Councilman Carter.
Is it mine? Any? Okay, I move for approval.
And the item passes. Item H is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval. SPUD 1625, rezoning 1801 Northwest 14th Street. Councilman Hammond.
This is a application to allow some infill. There were some technical evaluations that sound like they were agreed to and approved at the Planning Commission, so I'll move for approval.
And the item passes. Item 11I is ordinance on final hearing, SP 589, establishing a special permit to operate use unit 8300.33. Councilman Stone.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
If not, I'll go ahead and move for its approval.
And the item passes. Item J is an ordinance on final hearing for approval, closing a portion of the east-west alley within Block 5 of the Iowa Addition, South High Avenue and Southeast 15th Street. Councilwoman Nice.
Has anyone signed up to speak?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you. The purpose of this request is to consolidate property abutting the alley to facilitate commercial development. So with that, I will move for approval.
And the item passes. Item K is an ordinance on final hearing amending the limits of reserved parking for the physically disabled on the north side of Northwest 50th Street from approximately 384 feet west. Councilman Cooper.
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
I imagined not, because this is part of a much bigger project, so I would move for approval.
The item passes. Item L is an ordinance on final hearing establishing a no parking anytime restriction on South Klein. Councilman?
Anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
I'll move approval.
The item passed. Item M is an ordinance on final hearing removing a metered parking space on the east side of North Robinson Avenue. Councilwoman Hammond?
I will move for approval.
And the item passes. Item N is an ordinance on final hearing relating to zoning and planning code amending Chapter 59. I believe Katie Friddle is here to answer any questions, or is there?
Yes, she had presented before and talked about this item before. On this one, it's just, she's here for any questions.
Hearing no questions, if I could get a motion. So the item is moved, and staff has requested emergency as well, so. Somebody want to make that motion? And the emergency passes. Moving on to item O, it's an ordinance to be introduced and set for final hearing July 30th, related to the zoning and planning code amending Chapter 59.
Hello again. Katie Friddle, Planning Department. This is an ordinance before you to establish Lake Hefner Parkway as a scenic corridor. The ordinance or the code lays out a process by which we can designate specific areas as scenic corridors in order to protect the visual, aesthetic, natural character of those places, specifically by prohibiting billboards in those locations. We have one scenic corridor currently, that's the downtown scenic highway area that extends along I-40 from Penn to 235 and up 235 to about Northwest 16th Street. The sign code lays out criteria by which an area can be evaluated to be designated as a scenic corridor. These include that it is within a special purpose district, that it is adjacent to natural features and landscapes, that it has seen substantial public and private investment that have resulted in benefit to our community, and that it should be designated as such. So we've identified Lake Hefner Parkway as a corridor that seems to meet all of those applicable criteria for designation, and proposed this ordinance amendment to establish those corridor boundaries. Back on August 16th, 2023, Council enacted a moratorium on billboards in this specific area with the intent that that moratorium would expire either when the scenic corridor went into effect and was designated, or on August 10th, 2024, whichever came first. So we're hoping to come in under that August 10th deadline. Back on March 14th, Planning Commission's Development Review Committee reviewed this, and then in June, Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the scenic corridor designation. They did have one protestant that asked for their property to be excluded from within the boundary, and after discussing that at Planning Commission, they recommended that it be approved with the revision to exclude that property. It is just one parcel at the northern end of the property, and I think the second slide has a map that shows where that is located. So if council saw fit to approve it with the recommended change from Planning Commission, then you can amend that at final hearing.
Was that request made because there's an existing sign?
I don't believe they have an existing sign. They would like to retain the ability to have a sign in the future.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
So we just need a vote to introduce the ordinance and set the hearing.
Move the item.
Thank you. And the item passes. Item P is related. I don't know if there's anything else to say about it, other than
Item P is actually the introduction on the design review committees. And so actually it's item P and Q that are related. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's my fault. Okay, so item P, the ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing July 16th and final hearing July 30th, amending Chapter 50.
Today's the Katie Friddle show, and so she gets several opportunities to
again,
speak for you.
Making a very efficient use of my time, having
Yes.
all of these here the same day. This is an ordinance proposed to amend Chapter 59, consolidating our existing design review committees. The city has 5 different design review bodies, not including the Historic Preservation Commission, that oversee the downtown area, Bricktown, Stockyards, Scenic River, and then the urban design districts, which are areas like Plaza District, Paseo, Capitol Hill, sprinkled throughout the city, kind of our commercial character districts that all are subject to design review and that are reviewed by volunteer appointed committees that are appointed by the mayor and city council. As part of our ongoing effort toward the more comprehensive code update to Chapter 59 and the development codes, one of the things identified to be more efficient and more effective in our work was to streamline this design review process and to have fewer committees, fewer public meetings that have to be held, fewer volunteers that have to be identified, appointed, trained to serve on the committees, and just fewer meetings that staff has to administer throughout the year and throughout each month of the year. So this ordinance is the result of quite a bit of study of which committees made sense to combine with which other committees, and how that would work and how we would restructure those committees so that we were still getting representation for each of those different areas of the city. We are proposing to combine the Downtown Design Review Committee with the Bricktown Design Review Committee, since those areas are adjacent to each other, very similar physical character, very similar kind of underlying zoning, and then to combine the Urban Design Commission with the Stockyards Committee and the Scenic River, the Riverfront Design Committee that oversees the Scenic River Overlay Design District. Again, those have some similarities amongst them with the types of districts that they oversee and the types of underlying zoning that is applicable to them. The boundaries of each of the districts remain the same. The guidelines and regulations of each of the districts remains the same. The only thing that is changing is who the bodies are sitting in these seats, reviewing the applications that come forward from those districts. We've worked through the requirements for each of those committees. We have various professional requirements of design professionals and that sort of thing that have to serve on each body, real estate professionals, as well as having representation of residents, tenants, property owners from the applicable districts so that they still have a voice as their districts go forward onto these new bodies. We are proposing to keep the downtown committee that would absorb Bricktown, and then we would keep the urban design commission, and that would absorb the other two design districts. Planning Commission heard, each of the design review committees has reviewed this and recommended approval. This also went to the River Trust, and they recommended approval. They have 2 seats that they appoint on the Riverfront Design Committee, so we wanted them to be aware of this and to make sure we had their support for this as well. This went to Planning Commission. They recommended approval with the proposed revision that we rename the Downtown Design Review Committee to the Downtown Design Commission to be consistent with Urban Design Commission and with several other bodies that Planning Department also staffs, like Arts Commission, Historic Preservation Commission. So at this point, we would just ask for you all's support to go ahead and get this scheduled for a public hearing, but happy to answer any questions.
This has been long in the works, and I really appreciate Katie and her team taking the leadership on this. You know, local governments aren't known for making processes simpler and more efficient, and I think that's exactly what we're doing here. That it really is helping our residents and developers to be able to navigate the process, but also with staff being able to manage it. So it's a great move, and I really appreciate their leadership in this.
I just had a question. As we look at, I heard you talk about the Riverfront Committee. Help me to understand the boundaries. Will that also include, because when I think of Riverfront, I also think of that stretch of northeast Oklahoma City that encompasses that. So is that correct, or is that?
It goes all the way over to the First Americans Museum on the east, and then all the way down to Meridian on the west.
Okay. So with that, I think that's where my next question comes, because I'm totally in agreement with combining and consolidating the Bricktown and downtown. But as we look at that river front, that would be my question and ask of how we will be ensuring that we have adequate representation. And I heard what you said, but how are we ensuring that we have adequate representation that represents that part of the river for this particular body, and or what would that look like in order to consolidate that with downtown or with the downtown river, downtown Bricktown?
Oh, okay. Yes, we talked about a number of different scenarios combining different districts with each other, and whether River would make sense with downtown, whether Stockyards made sense with downtown, different ones that are adjacent. The thought process behind the way they are combined is that downtown and Bricktown are both a special zoning district that's the base zone, so their zoning is all-encompassing of everything that's applicable to those districts. Scenic River, as well as most of Stockyards and all of urban design, are zoning overlays, so those districts all contain a wide variety of underlying base zones, which for the most part doesn't really affect the review that our committees do, but we felt like that just was a logical dividing point. We were also looking at the volume of cases that the different areas see. Downtown has our highest volume of cases that they review, and Scenic River is typically next, so it kind of made sense to split those two and have a more balanced number of cases going to each of those newly formed design review bodies. The Urban Design Commission has 9 positions, and it will have, sorry, I don't have this written down in front of me, but it will have, let me find it in the ordinance. Of those members, I believe 3 need to be property owners or tenants within the district, and an additional 4 within one of the districts, and an additional 4 have to be knowledgeable of the district. And that's to allow for someone who might be, say, a Main Street manager or a bid district manager, or somehow otherwise deeply invested in the district but doesn't live there, doesn't own property there, to serve on the committee and provide their resources. We did not dedicate a specific seat for each of those districts, and that's in part because urban design oversees a large number of kind of sub-districts, and then when you add stockyards and add river to that, it starts to get really hard to fill those spots when all of them are so limited to who can serve in each one of those positions. But I understand the desire to make sure that each of those areas has a voice and has representation on that committee. And that, I think, as it's proposed, would just be something where we're working closely with the mayor's office, where interested parties in those particular districts are working closely with the mayor's office to make sure that they have representation on the committee.
Okay. In relation to that, and thank you for that, because now I'm actually reading it and seeing that too, as far as the membership term and terms and organization. That still concerns me as far as making sure we have that part of the river taken care of. And I say that respectfully because of some things that have already taken place where the river is, along the river, that have not been as complimentary to that part of our community, but because of, you know, some other interests, it happened. But I do want, and I would ask that you would, and how this process is to become and be determined by these guidelines, that we are very intentional about what that representation looks like for us to have someone that is a part of that part of the river. I know we're working to develop more of the west side of the river as we see what's already happening with the First Americans Museum in Okana and that part of the development. But that I would like for us to just keep, if you don't mind, just keep thinking through that if there's a way for us to look at that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
So we'll just need a motion to introduce the ordinance then. Okay, so we'll need to do this, yeah, we'll do this verbally. So-
Ward 8.
Okay, so the item passes, and I'm going to refresh my screen. While that happens, we can move on to item Q.
Which item Q is just a related item.
Right. So item Q is the ordinance to be introduced and set for a public hearing for Chapter 60 related to Katie's presentation on item P.
It's not allowing me to vote.
And the item passes. Let's see. Item R is a public hearing regarding ordinance repealing certain provisions of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2020. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
All right, we will close the public hearing then and move on to item S. 1, public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
We'll close that and move to item 2, a resolution declaring structures as dilapidated. And the item passes. And then item T1, public hearing regarding unsecured structures as amended from our earlier item. Has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
We'll close the public hearing and move on to item 2, the resolution declaring the structures as unsecured. And the item passes. Moving on to item U, the public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Item U1, has anyone signed up to speak?
They have not.
So we will close the public hearing and move on to item 2, declaring the buildings are abandoned. And the item passes. So move on to item 11V. Item 1 is a public hearing regarding the resolution approving the fiscal year 24-25 fifth action year plan. And is this correct?
Chris Varga
Okay.
is here with the Planning Department to just present this item. It's one that we have each year, but just give an overview on this item.
Good morning. Chris Varga, Planning Department, Housing and Community Development Division. This is our annual action plan item. It addresses the city's 2024 entitlement grants from HUD. This hearing is part of the public process that HUD requires that allows an opportunity for public comment on the recommended expenditures. This information was also reviewed and approved by the Citizens Committee for Community Development in their June 4th meeting. Basically, the funds for the entitlement grants include CDBG, Community Development Block Grant. Our allocation this year was around $5 million. Our Home Investment Partnerships Program, our allocation was about $2.2 million. Emergency Solutions Grant, about $431,000, and our HOPWA, Housing for Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, about $1.4 million. In general, the funds were increased about 1% to 3% this year, with the exception of Home, which had a 15% decrease. It was down about $400,000 from last year. All of these programs are used for persons in our community that's with low to moderate incomes as defined by HUD. For CDBG, those proposed to be funded and the funding amounts are not significantly changed from the prior year, with the exception of the addition of 2 new subrecipients. We have proposed funding for the Alpha Community Foundation of Oklahoma. It's a 501c3 corporation who is doing the Garden Oaks Community Center renovation, and they have asked for $200,000 to support the phase 2 of that renovation, and we are recommending addition of those funds. The second new subrecipient would be New View, which is previously the Oklahoma League for the Blind. It's at 501 North Douglas. It is the leading employer of persons in our community who are blind or visually impaired, and it's a manufacturing facility, and they are asking for funds to support enlargement of a water line to their facility that will allow them to include an expanded fire suppression system that's needed to retain their insurance and keep their operations going. They've requested $300,000, and that allocation is proposed as well. Our home funds, our proposed allocations are as usual. We propose a portion for the city's in-house housing rehabilitation programs for owner-occupied properties. We have a down payment assistance programs for home buyers, our home building projects by our CHODOs, community housing development organizations, and then we have a range of affordable housing projects that are received and reviewed under a solicitation that the department puts out for projects and is recommended for funding. Specific allowances for the ESG and HOPWA programs are not included in this report, as they are reviewed and evaluated by the Continuum Care Board, and recommendations be made at a later date. Any questions that I can address about this item?
May I ask, have we ever, and is it something legal can look into? Because I know that these funds, so much of this is HUD, right? It's federal dollars, and I also understand we have charter restrictions in terms of, so like for instance, something I'd asked you about pretty soon after I took office was, you know, the down payment assistance program and the housing rehab. You know, it's something I wondered, can the city do those sorts of things? And we can't, because that's considered a gift, right, to residents. Is that the case as well when it comes to general obligation bond and property tax, or is that restriction just on sales tax?
No, it would be true of anything that's city funds, and general obligation funds are city funds. In this case, these are actually grant funds, and that's why we have different restrictions.
Okay, just wanted that clarification. It's just this is just such important work that you're doing, the down payment assistance. You know, I just want to affirm you in it, but it's just so critical. I think another thing I'm really interested in, I've already mentioned this to the city manager, but you know, when I look at housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, and then I also just think of, as our boomers age, I'm really worried about seniors aging with HIV/AIDS. And I've seen in Seattle, for instance, I'm not sure if it's public or private, but I've absolutely seen housing where a couple floors of housing and then the ground level are the wraparound services. And so I don't know if that's something for us to consider as we're talking about the housing component in our next obligation bond next year. But it's something I'm really interested in is senior housing, but especially as it comes to this. I think this demographic in our city is one that's going to find itself maybe facing some different health challenges. And y'all have already done a good job, you know, managing, providing those services, but I'm really worried about that. And I don't know if there's any talk of that, or are we limited by what we can do in those sorts of instances from the charter?
I do think that's something we would have to look at with our bond counsel and with legal counsel to determine like what kind of, because you can put funding in for a program, but what kind of restrictions or definitions you could put around that, so we'd have to work with them to determine that.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just be interested in all the different categories, seniors themselves, right? But then particularly the kind of, you know, yeah, I just think, I'm just curious, so thank you. And thank you for the work you do.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
All right, City Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak on this public hearing?
No, they have not.
All right, so we'll close the public hearing and move to item 2, the resolution approving the item. So if we could take a motion. And the item passes. Item 11W is a resolution amending and adopting the personnel policies of the City of Oklahoma City. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Amy Badera, our Chief Human Resource Officer, is here to just cover the changes that we're making here. Periodically, we bring changes for the personnel policies back to the council, and so she'll give a quick update on the changes we're proposing.
Good morning, Vice Mayor and Council. Amy Madera, HR Department. Before you today is the resolution to adopt and amend the personnel policies of the City of Oklahoma City for our employees. I do want to thank the Employee Labor Relations Division. They had put a lot of work into this. It was led by Employee Labor Relations Manager Angela Payne Park. We had a committee that was 40-plus employees across the entire organization to have representation in the changes. Historically, the city goes through this cycle of review every 5 to 7 years, and so we're on par. We did it the last time in July of 2017. We had, of the key philosophies that we had was just really two themes that we had, as being a great place to work and to be able to have some modernization of our policies. And so we'll go through just a few material changes. Of just our consideration around recruiting, retention, our employee engagement inspired initiatives, we did make some few changes around vacation leave, and I'll go into some more detail on that one. We've updated our veterans' preferences. We've added our civility policy, just ensuring a respectful workplace. And we've made some changes around our employee step progression component for their annual increases outside of our cost of living. And then also we made changes around ensuring that our language was gender neutral. The other change that we had was just, as you know, the council approved a few years ago the change from personnel to the human resources department. So we changed the policies from personnel policies to employment policies to reflect that change. We had 100-plus changes, and a lot of it was just restructuring, and we moved the cycle around the life cycle of an employee from application through retirement and everything in between, so it made a good flow of the changes that we had within it. We worked with Municipal Council to identify the material changes that would require City Council consideration and hopeful for your approval. First one is Section 521, Customer Service Incentives for Employees. Previously, the Customer Service Incentive Program allows supervisors and department leaders to reward and recognize great service on occasions of extraordinary service, exceptional leadership, major projects, just again, our recognition program. And it awards them customer service leave to be used similar to our vacation leave. And this program had been previously limited to our full-time regular management employees. And really, as feedback from our gauge, we changed that to be able to include all of our part-time for some type of form of recognition award, as well as our other employees. The other change that we had was vacation leave. Previously, if we had a new hire employee that started with the organization, they were prohibited from using vacation leave during the first 6 months of the time with the city. Most of you all have ever changed jobs, you typically have something planned in that first 6 months. And so we loosened up the restriction to be able to allow them access to the leave. And as part of their job offer, we're going to give 40 hours for really the first paycheck available for that first 6 months. And then they'll begin to accrue once they hit their 6 months time period. There is a Scrivener's error in the council memo. It should state that after the 6 months of service, the employee would accrue at 3.42 hours of leave per pay period, and that was reflective of the policy. The next material change that we had was our sick leave conversion. This addition is typically brought to council for your approval when we do the cost of living increases. It's where the employees are able to convert 40 hours of their sick leave to be used as vacation leave. And this is something that council has approved each year. And so in order just to make that part of our policies so our employees can then could count on that being something as part of their compensation package. And then the last piece of it was going to be around the classification plan. Previous version of the employment policy stated that new classifications were subject to city council approval. These policies remove the requirement so that the HR department can maintain the authority to create new classifications as needed. Any pay changes or pay plan changes will still come to council for your approval. It will just allow us to be able to retitle a position, et cetera, without having to bring that to council each time. The implementation plan, the HR Employee Labor Relations team will be meeting with leadership. We have met just to introduce it to our department directors for their feedback before we took it to council. But they'll then meet with leadership and key contacts in each department. Our proposal is to make these effective in 30 days, so on August 2nd, to allow our 30-day required notice period. Also, future enhancements that we're having is going to make this online, so it's no longer on a paper-based handbook. That way, it's going to be user-friendly and access to all of our city employees. And with that, I'm open for any questions. Okay.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate your work on this.
Well, and I just appreciate the whole team, Mr. City Manager and Amy. Anytime we can make it a even greater place to work, then the employees that we hired 20 years ago who are still here today have an entirely different set of needs and expectations when they start a new job than those that we are hiring today. And the fact that we're responding to that and really looking at what we can do to continue to improve, that is thumbs up for me.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments too. I also appreciate the fact that they work so hard to make sure they incorporated other employees' voices to hear what their perspective is, so that we make sure that we're including that in our decisions.
Okay, when we just need a motion to move this. And the item passes. Item X is a resolution authorizing the incurrence of indebtedness by the Aqua by issuance of one or more services. So, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Chris Browning, our Utilities Director, is here to present this item of authorization for indebtedness.
Good morning, Chris Browning, Utilities Director. The Oklahoma Water Resources Board administers the Federal Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program for Oklahoma. On April 23rd, the Water Trust approved a resolution agreeing to file a loan application with the OWRB for financial assistance through the loan program. On May 21st, the OWRB approved the trust loan application for $75,261,000. The advantage with going with an SRF loan is that the interest rates are actually lower than our rates available, although we're AAA rated. So there's about a 30% federal subsidy. So we get about 70% of our normal rate when we use SRF funding. So it's an advantage for our ratepayers. The proposed drinking water SRF projects include electrical improvements at Draper and several of our booster stations, clear well upgrades at Draper, Hefner clarifier and clear well improvements, water storage tank replacements at both Colgate and Macomb pumping stations along the Atoka pipeline, and water line replacement program along Penn from 10th to Main Street. Access to funds require approval from the Water Trust and from City Council, so at this time we recommend approval of this item. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Chris, while you're up there, could you update the council members on where we're at with the 72-inch pipeline we're building to southern Oklahoma, which is some of these funds are going towards, I would suspect?
Absolutely. So we have 9 segments along the 100-mile stretch between Draper and Atoka. We have 5 under construction. We're getting ready to award a pumping station here in the next few weeks, or advertise and then award that pumping station, and that will be located at Lake Atoka. There will be 2 other pumping stations along that stretch as well for the new 72-inch pipeline, and we plan to award the 4 remaining segments within the next 2 years so that the pipeline will be completed by the end of '28, and that will enable us to increase our pumping capacity from Lake Atoka to Draper by about 50%. Right now, we're limited at 80 million gallons a day, and that'll take us to 120 million gallons a day when that pipeline is completed.
Is that on? The studies have shown that this will allow us to have an adequate water supply for our kids and grandkids through 2060. And I think that's important for everyone to know. I also think it's important to tell Chris, thank you. He's been working in an incredibly difficult period of time with building material costs going up incredibly every week and finding the adequate labor to finish building this pipeline. And so my hat's off to Chris. He's done a great job with this project.
Councilman, to put that into perspective, we originally, when we started the project, the estimated cost was about $700 million, and it's topping $1 billion today. That's just increased in labor and material costs.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we can take a motion. And the item passes. Moving on to item 11Y1, a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Roberto Lucio and the city of Oklahoma City. No executive session has been requested. And the item passes. Moving on to item Z1, joint resolution with OCMFA on the settlement of the workers' compensation subrogation claim. Executive session has not been requested. And the item passes. Item AA1, it's a joint resolution with OCMFA for Collins, Zorn, and Wagner. Executive session was not requested by staff.
I'd like to move to include this in executive session.
We have a motion on item 2. The request for executive session fails, so we will move back to item 1, the resolution. And the item passes. Item AB is a request for executive session, which we will conduct after our business. On the advice of the municipal council or the county commissioners versus the city of Oklahoma City.
Vice Mayor, I just wanted to announce, made it a part of the record, that I'm going to recuse myself on that because of my employment at Feller Snyder. Thank you.
Thank you. And the item passes. Moving on to item AC, executive session in the case style Dylan Reeder versus the city of Oklahoma City. And the item passes. And then item AD is another request to vote to enter into executive session regarding the case of Vanessa House Beer Company versus the city of Oklahoma City. And the item passes. We will take up those items later on in our meeting. Thank you. All right, item AE, claims recommended for approval. Staff has not requested executive session, so we can take items 1A through C as one vote. And the item passes. Moving on to section 12, comments from council. Ward 1.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Just as we approach our nation's Independence Day and July 4th, I want to remind people not to call 911 when our residents are setting fireworks off. But we do have a hotline, and the phone number is 405-297-2222, which they can call and report and tattletale on all their neighbors the way they'd like to, and it helps keep 911 available for emergencies. And other than that, I hope everybody has a very good and safe week. Thank you.
Ward 2, sorry.
None today, thank you.
It's amazing.
Ward 4.
Oh, thank you, Vice Mayor. I just wanted to wish everyone a happy 4th of July and just remind them to stay safe and be careful.
Ward 5.
I want to take a moment and congratulate the Oklahoma Charge 14-year-old volleyball team who went to Orlando and won the national championship a couple of weeks ago. And a little girl named Bella Holasak won the MVP of the tournament. So Oklahoma City doing good across the country.
Ward 6. Ward 7.
Thank you. Well, since Councilperson Cooper won't brag on himself, I just want to say that we ended our Pride Month with someone we know and we're familiar with as the Grand Marshal of the parade. So I am so surprised he didn't want to mention and talk about that, but it's always fun to celebrate the things that we're able to do. So grateful for you and the things that you were able to do as far as leading the charge and leading the parade. It was a long way to Scissortail Park, that's for sure, and it just speaks of how, as a city, we are able to accept, even if we don't accept, we accept the things that are happening around us and the people that live within our city limits as well. So it was a joy to experience you as the Grand Marshal for the parade. It was a pretty busy weekend. I know I told you all about riding on the bus, and if you get a chance, the third Friday is free for our city to get on the bus for yourself, and just being able to experience and talk to folks on the bus. Although we were having a meeting, it was cool to just, people were like, hey, how y'all doing? And asking what we were doing. And they joined in on those conversations. And that's what it's all about, being able to connect with the folks that you live around, and also understanding where some of those gaps are as far as our transportation is concerned. If there are any, you get to experience and understand those things for yourself that maybe your residents have said, hey, will you take a look at this? You can experience it and understand it. So that was awesome to do. Also this weekend, I've been, I guess, got to cruise, the river cruise, with the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated for their Cabana Cruise event, and being able to also experience our city and our Embark department as far as the cruise, river cruise is concerned. It was really nice to see the ways that we have our development that's happening with Okana, just to see it a little more close from that river perspective, and have conversations with the people that were also on the cruise with us to explain some of the things that are happening, like that pedestrian bridge that's coming. So they got to see those things for themselves. So that was really nice to experience, and also to be in the Boathouse District and understand all of the positive things that are coming to that part of our community as well. I wanted to also, last night, went to our Parks Department is meeting with, a few folks from our Parks Department are meeting with our Menace Lakeview steering committee, if you will. So I was asked to join that meeting last night, and I just want to send praises to Naisha Morris in the Parks Department for her tremendous work, and the residents that are a part of that steering committee who continuously speak highly of the work that she is doing to help to accommodate and revive our center that is within our Spencer community of Oklahoma City. And being able to say, we want programming, and she's helping to make sure that it's crafted the way that this part of our community has asked. So very grateful for the things that she's doing to work hand in hand with our neighbors and our residents that live within this part of our community. And I will say, mark your calendars, I'm telling you this now, August 24th, we will do a grand reopening for Menace Lakeview, and I know we're all very excited about the programming and things to come that we will be able to brag about a little bit more in the future weeks to come for this particular community. I also want to thank Michael Clark, and there was another gentleman that joined him with our engineers, as well as Miss August Mothershed, and she had planned on being here, but unfortunately she had to take, she had a appointment, doctor's appointment, so she was unable to be with us today. And Miss August lives on our Lottie area, so we met on last week to continue to talk through our Lottie bike lanes. Yes, we continue to talk about them. And I think it's very important for us to understand how this is impacting our neighborhood, how this is impacting our community, and how we were able to even watch our waste management, how they had to maneuver trying to pick up trash with cars parked in the places they're supposed to be parked. And I understand that if there is a car that is blocking the trash can, that they have the opportunity to flag that can and not pick it up, when in fact, that car is in a parked area that is designated for parking. So there are still some things that need to be worked out as far as this bike lane is concerned, and I hope we can continue to work through that as we work through how we can accommodate our neighbors on Lottie. And I also wanted to say that next week you will see our streets, especially downtown, filled with ladies in red, and that is because of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Regional Conference. So if you see those ladies, I know them very well, just please say hello and show them that beautiful spirit of Oklahoma City that we know in downtown Oklahoma City. And also wanted to talk about, lastly, yesterday there was a press conference that was given by Live Free OKC about the gun violence and the things that are happening within our community, our neighborhoods, and how we navigate what's happening in our neighborhoods, of being able to look at working together to prevent gun violence and crisis, or those types of ways to help accommodate our residents in our community. So I know there will be some more numbers and things to come. And also it's important to note how the Surgeon General, U.S. Surgeon General most recently has declared shootings and gun violence a public health crisis in our nation. And that does not exclude our city in those numbers that have happened as a result of us seeing inter-community violence, and also seeing just violence overall with laws that have been impacting to states that don't require certain background checks and other things that could have prevented said things. So I hope we will continue to look at how these things impact our communities, especially as we look at those the recommendations that we have continued to work through and talk about for our city. And I hope everyone also has a good week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward 8.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Today, when we convened as the Public Property Authority, we voted on item number PPAE. It was a resolution accepting a $20,000 donation from the family of Leon Elliott. The family wanted to make a donation of $20,000 in his name to Lincoln Park Golf Course. I thought this was interesting. The family said Lincoln Park Golf Course meant a great deal to Leon, and he spent a great deal of time playing golf there. Mr. Elliott's family has requested this donation be used for the continued upkeep and beautification. I'm always really proud when people make contributions like this, especially when it's for Oklahoma City's beautification. The second thing I wanted to mention, and hopefully everybody knows this, 25 years ago today, Bricktown's Canal opened. And there's one thing I bet you don't know about that, and there was a lady by the name of Debbie Martin who was in charge of the opening. And while they were expecting, thousands of people to show up, they did not expect, some have estimated, over 25,000 people to show up for the opening. And this project was the catalyst, the beginning of what I believe has made us the great city that we are today. It has an incredible economic impact it's generated over $629 million. It's supporting 5,331 jobs and contributing to an additional 2,347 jobs in the area. And so 25 years ago today, it all began. It's doing well, and I'm very proud of that project. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I just had a few comments. First and foremost, as Councilman Carter referenced, the 4th of July is coming up. It's Independence Day. We'd just like to ask our residents to keep our service members in their thoughts and prayers, as many of them are not home to celebrate with their families who are continuing out the good fight to ensure that we enjoy the freedoms that we have today. The second thing is I had the opportunity to attend an RTA board meeting this last week where the RTA approved the routes and methods for additional corridors. We saw a couple of those, a couple corridors today as it's related to the North and South BRT, but coming soon to a theater near you is going to be a western corridor and an airport corridor serving both our city residents as well as the guests coming into Oklahoma City, of which we anticipate there being many in the years to come. So I really enjoyed that interaction with Chairman Henry and the board and the work that Kimberly Horn has put in to that project and what's coming soon. I'm very excited about it. Next up, and last but certainly not least, we just continue to keep our police and fire service members in our thoughts and prayers as they had to complete a task last evening that is most difficult when you're rescuing a member of the police and fire family from a situation where loss of life is incurred. And so we just lift up our police officers and our firefighters and all those that were involved in that attempted rescue, as well as Karen Fox and the city staff who might have known her son as well. So we just appreciate their thoughts and prayers with regards to that. So with that, we will move on to citizens to be heard. We have a few today. So I will call your name. If you will come up and state your name and address, and you will have 3 minutes, and the city clerk will give you a 30-second warning when your time is near. First up will be Glenn King.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm here in regard to my property located at 416 Northwest 29th Street. I arrived here earlier months ago to a city council hearing to whether or not they were going to give permission for it to be demolished. After I met here at this meeting, I was referred by Mrs. Katie Friddle to go back to code enforcement and try to understand, try to be directed toward what it was that I needed to do to get my house out of exterior maintenance violation status that they elevated to, for it to be condemned due to it had holes in the wall that I repaired after meeting with the code inspector. I repaired the exterior maintenance after meeting with the code inspector on, I just spoke with him outside on February the 8th. So I was making strides. I talked to the code inspector approximately an hour, maybe 2 hours. Maybe if I talked to him an hour, 30 minutes of that was him telling me that we're gonna tear your house down. We're going to tear your house down. He didn't just say it once, twice, or 3 times. That was the topic of his conversation. I assured him that I did not want my house torn down, and I would do everything that they were directing me to do to take it out of exterior maintenance violation status. while I was doing that, I have proof here, if I can show the council here, that I have proof that I had holes in the west side of my house, and I made strides. I want to just bring these pictures up there if I can. Can I approach you all? I wanted to make sure that I, once I told him that I was going to prepare the exterior maintenance to get it out of violation status, I was given permission from the chief building inspector, Chris Smith. I talked to him. We talked, for approximately, 2 hours or an hour, however we talked, and I assured him that I did not want to have my house torn down, and I would do everything that I'm...
30 seconds remaining.
Dang. Okay, well, I'm sorry. Pardon me. So there again, he gave me time, and then when I contacted him, he told me to stop working on my house. He said he demanded that I stop working on the house because I just spoke with Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, sir? Yes. No, I spoke with his officer, and he told me that, now you need a CA. But when I asked him, he told me that, when I asked him about, well, when I go down here to get a CA to HP, would I need to do anything to stop you all from going forward with the demolition of my home? He said, no, don't worry about it. I'll stay in contact with them. When I went down here, we just had a meeting on the 27th. I had a meeting with Mr. Chad Davidson, and he gave me time. He said, well, if you have an application ready, Ms. Friddle and Mrs. Yatter, they were the ones that I was working through to get my application together. I made strides to, where you see the holes in the walls, those were repaired. And I was fastly coming out of the portions of my house that was bringing into exterior maintenance violations. Well,
you're over time, sir. A few final comments.
At the same time, if I'm asked to do something by code enforcement, as I'm directed to do, and they tell me to stop doing what they instructed me to do, and I'm making strides to get my house out of violation status so that it doesn't come to this, if they doesn't recognize it, and I'm telling him, now I just met with him on the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. King.
No, I'm just saying, I just met with him on the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. King. Your time has expired.
What is it that I need to do if they're telling me? I'm asking a question.
Staff will meet with you.
Pardon me?
Our staff will meet with you.
What do you mean?
Outside. Our staff members that are here will meet with you and let you know what you need to do.
They'll meet with you outside right now.
Right now.
Him?
Yeah.
He's going to meet with me?
But may I have a couple.
Can I hand in my application today? Because he asked me to hand in my application today. So I have an application that I would like to hand in today in front of the city council that if I need to do more, I'll do as they instruct me to do. But if I need to do more, but I have an application, here it is. Here's my application right here. I'm ready to hand it in. He told me if I handed it in today, that I would, this would prevent, I guess to say, the demolition of my home if I handed him something, if I handed in a complete application today. Okay. So this is my complete application that I would like to hand in to.
So they'll meet with you outside and.
Pardon me?
They'll meet with you outside and get that coordinated with you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Cooper.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You're fine. Mr. Davidson, would you mind speaking to this for us and give us a little bit of a context? You spoke with me this morning right before the council meeting.
Sure. Chad Davidson, Code Enforcement Superintendent. I'll first say, before I do that, I spoke with Mr. King in the hall, and he has made me aware that he's filed an injunction in the district court, so I'm not completely sure if we should speak on it or not.
Yeah, we should probably have our attorneys get involved with that.
I told him that I would revoke the injunction if I could speak with him through his office to hand in my.
Right. Our issue is if you have legal action with us.
Pardon me?
Our issue is that if you have legal action with us, that our staff really can't address that. So we would need to talk to our attorneys. So if you have legal action filed against us You need to talk with our attorneys about that, but we want to do what we can to try to help you with this. So, Chad, did you have?
Like I said, I can speak on the timeline.
Yeah, if you
like.
can just answer
Okay.
Councilman Cooper's questions.
Okay.
Actually, no. I changed my mind.
Okay.
Now that I know what I know, and I want to be.
Can this be remedied with?
Excuse me,
if
just
I
for,
withdraw-
excuse
I'm
me.
sorry, sir, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Thank you. As I speak, I'm staring at a Google map photo of a property that I know very, very well because I live right around the corner from here. My heart breaks at the condition of this property, knowing the housing crisis this city has, knowing the unaffordability of homes in this neighborhood. The rule is when someone is suing the city and taking legal action against the city, it is no longer appropriate for us as council members to speak on that matter. It is now time for whoever's bringing that lawsuit to speak with the lawyers, and so that is where I will leave this, but I stand by what I said earlier.
I only filed that, sir,
Thank you,
because
Mr.
I
King.
thought that there was no.
Mr. King, your time has expired. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, one comment on this. Chad, get one of our lawyers. You can have settlement discussions outside the hall. It's just we can't comment on it up here on the.
Right, we've got one of our
So-
attorneys that's coming down.
Great.
We'll meet with them.
Okay. Do you want your pictures back, or do you want us to keep them? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, sorry.
Are we good? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. King. Up next, it will be Ronnie Kirk.
Am I to speak with Mr. Davidson?
You can go out in the hall there.
My name is Ronnie Kirk. My address is 2328 North Missouri. On June the 3rd, I went down to my hometown, McAlester, Oklahoma, where I was born at. I went by my old school. It's been closed for 2 years. I also went by the new school, beautiful school. I got down there in time for one of the commencements. And I asked them, I was up in the third balcony. I said, do y'all know who started Juneteenth in Oklahoma? He said, no, we sure don't. I gave him all the documentation. And I said, I did. That's the documentation that y'all have there. This part of history here I want to talk about is the massacre, the riot in Greenwood. It was a mob of people, the KKK, the police department, the National Guard, and the Air Force who dropped the incendiary bombs on Tulsa. The bombs that's when they can't find no mass graves. There is no mass grave. That's when they can't find no witnesses. There is no witness. Everybody with a witness was killed. The kids, the older people, anybody that there was black that could see it was killed. The ones who lived further out, the blacks who could only see the fire, they wasn't witnesses. That's when they lived. Only thing they said, y'all looked outside, all I could see was fire. But that Tulsa race riot, man, you know, we can't change history, but we can do things to make it better. Those are the part of history. If y'all under 62 years old, you don't know nothing about it. And those of you who are 62 and 64, y'all were just kids.
30
so
seconds.
Y'all know nothing about
30
it.
seconds remaining.
And we just need to make things better for everybody. Everybody said, Ron, how come they don't give you no recognition for starting Juneteenth? Everybody recognized me for Juneteenth. I don't need nobody to recognize me. I fed 11,440 kids in 35 years. That's enough for me. And I want to say thank y'all. We're taking the city, we're going way into the future. It's going to be better.
Thank you,
So
Mr.
let's
Kirk.
make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Up next will be Steve Hunt.
Hello, I'm Steve Hunt. I think some of y'all are familiar with a few years ago, Pride in Oklahoma City went the route of Persian New Year and splintered into two groups, one representing the Chamber of Commerce downtown, and then the original group on 39th that these folks stand on the shoulders of. The reason I want to talk about this is 7 or 8 days ago, I received a communication from someone that stated that Mayor Holt had been making calls to, oh, you're good? Had been making calls to big donors and supporters of 39th Street Pride, asking them to pull their support and to pull their money from the original group that has been, for a long time doing Pride here in the city. I wasn't sure if it was true or not, but a few days later when it came out that all these groups had pulled from 39th Pride, Loves Travel, Bank of Oklahoma, Continental Resources, Arnall Foundation, the one that does a lot of stuff with the jail and funds Live Free, Devon Energy, VI Marketing and Branding, that's the group that does all the propaganda for the Chamber of Commerce. They did the Big League City campaign. The fellow who actually ran it is up in Colorado now, which is kind of funny because His August Majesty gave me a hard time about moving to Seattle, a couple years after I ran for mayor. Actually, we helped get Ed on the council, so I'm like, yeah, it's okay to get out of here. So OG&E and also Omni Hotels and Resorts, they all pulled their support. Now, it's interesting, the Omni Hotel and Resorts got $85 million in subsidy from the city. The owner of that, Robert Rowling, is worth $9.2 billion, meaning the $85 million we gave to the Omni as a corporate welfare measure, 0.009% of his wealth. And these are the people that His Majesty Holt made calls to pull support because, as my friend Mark Fox said just a minute ago, Holt's job is to kill anything that does not take money away from...
30 seconds remaining.
I got you. Holt's job is to kill anything that takes money away from his downtown billionaire buddies. I think you all know what's going on with the chamber, how a lot of times this council is nothing but a horrible Chamber of Commerce cover band with supporting the arena swindle. I mean, the reason that Bennett needs a new arena and started CJAC is the loans he's taken out leveraging the Thunder. And I think, but I just wanted to get on the record for the people out watching on YouTube, Channel 20 Land, to know about this because it's real. And I think Mayor Holt and the decaying systems of power he represents. I'm going to finish. Give me just 1 second. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to be disrespectful. But with this, the decaying systems of power that Mayor Holt represents warrant our distrust. And James, the chamber, Clay,
That's time, Mr.
there's
Hunt.
no
Thank
LGBTQ
you.
flag big enough to cover up their plundering ways.
Up next will be
Thank you,
Ms.
sorry.
Ramona Diaz.
Good morning. So sorry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ramona Diaz. Today I'm going to be speaking in regards to the ceasefire resolution coming up on the July 30th agenda. I'm just going to read what I wrote here, if that's okay. I'm here as a constituent of yours who's proud of Oklahoma City's diverse community. I'm asking you to please pass the Palestine-Israel ceasefire resolution set for the July 30th agenda. We've seen relentless death and violence directed at the Palestinian people of Gaza and the West Bank over the last 11 months. As Oklahomans, we contribute directly to this violence through the production and export of weapons to Israel and through state and federal policies of sending billions of dollars in aid to Israel, giving them resources to perpetuate their genocide of Palestinian people. In light of the events this past weekend in which queer people of Oklahoma City participated in the first annual Oklahoma City Dyke March and demanded the Oklahoma City Pride Alliance disclose investors tied to Israel, I ask the City Council to uphold the will of their constituency's grassroots demands for justice for the Palestinian people. Maybe we can't end the occupation of Palestine, and maybe we can't stop the violence. But what we can do in Oklahoma City is take a firm stand against US-funded genocide abroad and take a firm stand against anti-Palestinian, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, and xenophobic rhetoric. The Oklahoma City Council has a responsibility to uphold their constituents' values. Everyone I know in my community here in Oklahoma City wants a ceasefire and an end to the bloodshed. Oklahoma City is my home, and I believe the city should reaffirm our values as a community that values human life, human diversity, and ultimately respect for one another's humanity. I urge you to please consider the ceasefire resolution on the July 30th agenda for passage. Thank you so much. I yield my time.
That's why Dave made those calls about the Palestine stuff.
Thank you, Dave.
Forgot to mention that part.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Up next is William Cathy. Mr. Cathy, you have 3 minutes, and the city clerk will let you know when you're at 30 seconds.
Well, I thought I would be very brief about why I came to speak. But seeing Mark Stonecipher here, I need to be a little more verbose since I'm being paid by the hour, like he is usually. I live right across the street from Sacred Heart Church, Catholic Church, and right across from Mount St. Mary's. I don't live there. I stay with the Ingalls, which is a story in and of itself, but I walk a lot. So does Father Wolf, who's my business partner in Living Catholic Productions. And we walk several miles, and I want to tell you, in that area of Old Capitol Hill, it's the new Mexico City, and it's very good. The Mexican or the Hispanic people are wonderful neighbors. But who aren't wonderful are their pit bulls running free. They want to bite me on my rear end, and they want to bite Father Wolf and everyone who walks. Everywhere in Oklahoma City, we have animal control, but apparently they get a pass because they don't understand English. That's BS. They're great citizens or great people, residents of Oklahoma City. Treat them like everybody else. Don't kill the dogs. My brother kicked my ass if he knew I was trying to get the dogs killed. Just give them a $50 fine. Believe me, the Hispanic people won't stand for 50 and then double it to 100. They'll have them locked up because everywhere you go, there's 20 dogs per block, and only 2 are running free. Now, I want to address just a minute there. I'm an unabashed pro-Israel person, and so is most of the people of Oklahoma City. It wasn't Israel that chopped babies' heads off after October 7th. Every time I hear an American say they're against American genocide, there is no such thing as American genocide. We stopped the Nazis. The Palestinians supported the Nazis during the war. The Mustafa was in Berlin clapping. They're the only people that cheered the genocide. It was very home to me because I had a girlfriend that we talked about being married, Lori English, in law school at OCU. I talked about my grandparents, how wonderful they were. She said, "That's such a great story, Bill. Your grandparents are great." I said, "How about your grandparents, Lori?" All 4 were exterminated in Auschwitz. End of conversation, end of
30
story.
seconds remaining.
Pardon? End of the story there. Don't buy this crap this guy just said about us supporting genocide. I'm an American citizen. 2 days before the 4th of July, shame on anybody that says there's American genocide. I support Benjamin Netanyahu, and I hope they destroy Hamas completely. And we know what that means. Thank you.
And that's time. We will now recess into executive session. We will return upon the conclusion of that to complete our business. Thank you. We've returned from executive session, and now, having concluded our business, we are adjourned.